This happened a few months ago. I'm 34, an art teacher in the neighborhood. I thought it would be nice to bring everyone together after all that isolation from the pandemic. So, I volunteered to organize the Halloween event at the old community center. The center had character but felt spooky. The gym floor was cracked, and dark hallways had posters from events long past. I arrived early that night, excited to set up decorations. It was quiet, too quiet. I had lights strung up and tables prepared but felt an uneasy chill in the air. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I was just imagining things. Families started to arrive as night fell. That's when the lights began to flicker. I thought it was a simple electrical issue. The flickering shadows on the walls made my heart race. I convinced myself it was nothing, just my mind playing tricks. During the party, I went to check on supplies in a closet. That's when I found old photographs. They were from Halloween events long ago. The faces looked happy, too happy. But their smiles didn't reach their eyes. My stomach twisted. I pulled one out to take a closer look. Suddenly, I heard laughter. It echoed down the empty hallway. I froze. There were no kids around, and my heart raced. I looked around, panic rising in my throat. Was I losing my mind? I tried to convince myself it was kids playing nearby, but deep down it felt wrong. Walking back to the main room, I noticed the decorations I had put up were rearranged. The pumpkins I carefully set were turned at odd angles. I hadn't seen anyone else nearby. My heart pounded. Maybe it was a prank, but it didn't feel like one. It felt deliberate. As I spoke to a couple of parents, I heard that laughter again. This time, right behind me. I turned quickly, but there was nobody there. Just an empty hallway. The air felt thick, and my skin prickled. I didn't know what to think. I left the party early, unsettled and confused. I still think about that night. I wonder if the laughter was real or just in my head. Maybe it's linked to the community center's past. I just know I can't shake the feeling that something lingers in those dim halls. As I walked to my car, I heard a soft voice whisper, "Stay." I stopped. I turned to look but saw nothing, just shadows creeping along the ground. My breath caught in my throat. Now, those memories haunt me. Every time I pass the old community center, I feel a chill. I can't help but wonder what really happened that night. The laughter still echoes in my mind, and I worry it will never fade away. The next day, I couldn't shake the unsettling feelings from the party. I decided to go back to the community center. Maybe I needed to face whatever was haunting me. As I approached the old building, it felt even more foreboding in the daytime. The cracked facade looked worn and tired, like it was holding centuries of secrets. I pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, echoing through the empty rooms. I felt a wave of unease wash over me. Every step I took was hesitant. I wanted to believe I'd find the source of my anxiety, but deep down, I feared what I might uncover. The gym was just as I'd left it the night before, decorations still sprawled carelessly across the floor. I reluctantly moved to the area where I had spotted the old photographs. Maybe if I dug a little deeper, I could understand the connection. Each photograph was slightly worn at the edges, as if they had been passed around too many times. But one of them caught my eye. It was of a group of children dressed in costumes, their faces bright and cheerful. Except for one boy standing at the back. His smile was starkly different, a wide grin that seemed almost sinister. He looked directly at the camera, as if he had known something we didn't. I shivered. That's when I heard it again, the laughter. This time, it came from the upper floor. I paused, my heart racing. The last time I heard it, I was convinced it was just my imagination. But now, it was as if the sound had weight, something solid and real. Should I go upstairs? My instincts screamed no, but curiosity pushed me forward. With each step up the staircase, the boards creaked under my feet, sending chills up my spine. I reached the top and peered down the hallway. The laughter stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. I felt like I was being watched. I turned down another hallway. As I walked, I noticed doorways leading to dusty rooms filled with disused equipment. I hesitated, but I had to know what was going on. I pushed open the door to the nearest room, and the musty smell of forgotten things hit me. Behind an old curtain, I noticed something shiny. I pulled it back and gasped. It was a mirror, cracked and dusty, reflecting my wide eyes back at me. But when I looked closely, I saw something behind me in the reflection, a figure. It was fleeting, just for a moment, but I felt my blood run cold. I turned quickly, but the room was empty. My heart pounded in my chest. I grabbed my phone, thinking I could use the flashlight to help navigate the shadows. Only then did I see it. The light from my phone flickered and died, plunging me into darkness. Panic set in as I fumbled for a way out. Then, the laughter erupted again. This time, it was closer. I could hardly breathe, the fear gripping me like a vice. I knew I had to escape, but a part of me was desperate to know what was happening. Just as I took a step back, I felt something brush against my arm. I turned and was met with a whisper, "Stay with us." I didn't know what to do. I could feel the pull of that voice. The shadows seemed darker, alive around me. In that moment, I had to make a choice: stay and uncover what was hidden, or flee while I still could. I didn't have much time to think. The voice lingering in my ear felt like chains wrapping around me, pulling me deeper into the darkness. I took a breath, trying to steady myself, but the laughter had transformed into a high-pitched shriek that echoed off the walls. I couldn't stay here. I had to get out. I turned toward the door, but my feet seemed glued to the floor. The whispering grew louder, more insistent. "Stay with us." Panic surged through me, and I took a step back, pushing against the wall as if it would protect me. My fingers brushed the cracked surface of the mirror again. I glanced at it, terrified of what I might see. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the room. I turned my head just in time to catch a glimpse of something moving behind me. My heart raced as I faced the reflection. The figure was back, but this time more defined. It was a child, his face twisted into that same sinister grin from the photo. My breath caught in my throat. In a frantic attempt to escape, I stumbled backward and crashed into a pile of old gym mats. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and I lay there, heart racing, desperately trying to gather my thoughts. Just as I started to pull myself up, the laughter returned, this time sounding like a chorus of children. I felt their energy in the room, electric and chaotic. I scrambled to my feet and dashed toward the door, pushing past the curtain. My initial sense of direction was gone, and I turned blindly down the hallway. I had to find the staircase. As I rushed past the doors, I noticed they were slightly ajar, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. The air felt thick, almost clogging my throat. I wanted to scream but could only manage a choked gasp. All I could think about was getting out. That's when I saw a flash of movement at the end of the hall. A figure stood there, silhouetted against a weak beam of light coming from a window. It was just a child, but something in the way he stood sent a chill down my spine. The boy turned towards me, and I recognized him. The one in the photograph. "Don't go," he said, his voice clear and unsettling. Time froze. I was caught between fear and curiosity. "What do you want?" I shouted over the laughter. The boy smirked, and the shadows around him twisted and flared, as if celebrating. I felt tiny fingers brush my arm again, tugging insistently. Fear gripped me once more. I couldn't breathe. I had to find a way out. I took one last look at the boy, and my instincts kicked in. I turned and sprinted back towards the staircase. I needed to get out of the old community center now. As I flew down the steps, I heard them, a chorus chanting the same words: stay with us. Their laughter morphed into cries, echoing in my ears as I stumbled to the exit. Just as I reached the door, it slammed shut in front of me, trapping me inside. I knew this was just the beginning. I was not alone, and whatever was in there wanted me to stay. I slammed my palm against the door, panic flooding my senses. I couldn't let them trap me. I remembered the windows, maybe I could escape through there. Turning on my heel, I raced down the hallway, shoving aside the nagging whispers that clawed at my thoughts. I needed to focus. The dim light flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows on the walls that felt as if they were closing in. At the end of the corridor, I spotted a window, but it was barred. My heart sank into my stomach. I was not going to get trapped here. Just then, the laughter crescendoed again. It was louder, echoing through the hall like a dark symphony, fueling my fear. I pressed on, moving past the doors I'd seen earlier. Each one whispered of horrors I didn't want to uncover. I wanted to scream, but the sound stuck in my throat. I turned a corner and skidded to a stop. There was a door that looked different, a solid wooden thing with ancient carvings. It might be my only chance. I twisted the handle, and to my surprise, it swung open. Inside, the room was just as unsettling as the others. Dust motes hung in the air, catching what little light crept through the dirty window. Old trophies and photos littered the shelves, remnants from a forgotten past. But one thing caught my eye: a large, ornate mirror that dominated the far wall. The surface shimmered strangely, as though something stirred beneath it. My instincts screamed for me to leave, but I was drawn closer. The boy's face flashed into my mind, his grin haunting. I stepped toward the mirror, compelled to look despite every warning bell in my head. As I gazed into the glass, the reflection shimmered, and suddenly I wasn't just seeing my own terrified face. The boy appeared beside me, his eerie smile stretching wider. "You found it," he whispered, his voice laced with excitement. "Now you can join us." I yanked my head away, stumbling backward. "Join you? No. I want to leave." Panic gripped me. The room seemed to tilt, and I could hear the cries of the other children fading in and out, like a radio losing signal. The boy stepped closer, reaching out a hand. "It's fun here. You'll like it." Something about his words drugged my fear, but the urgency to escape pushed me back. "I don't want to be here," I shouted. Suddenly, the mirror rippled like water, and the boy's features began to twist. The laughter of children crescendoed into a high wail. The air around me grew colder, creeping into my skin, and I knew time was running out. Then everything went dark. The lights above fizzled out, plunging the room into shadow. I faltered in my footing, clinging to anything I could find. In the dark, the whispers turned frantic. "Stay, stay with us." A flicker of light returned, and I saw a shadow looming directly in front of me. Fear shot through my veins. I had to get out. Just as I turned to bolt for the door, a cold hand grabbed my wrist, pulling me back. I gasped. "No." But the grip tightened. I could feel the icy breath of the thing behind me. I spun around, ready to fight back, but when I saw it, the mirror changed again. This time, it wasn't just reflecting me. It showed a scene, a dark ritual with the children standing in a circle, chanting. I realized then they weren't playing, they were binding something. I couldn't stay. I tore free from the cold grip and lunged for the door, desperation fueling every step. I needed to get outside before I became part of their game. But as I crossed the threshold, the world shifted again, and the door slammed shut behind me, sealing my fate in this nightmare. I stumbled into the dark corridor, my heart racing. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Whatever was behind me felt too alive, too close. My breath echoed off the walls, and the laughter still echoed, haunting me like a ghost. I needed to find a way out, but the shadows here felt thick, swallowing the light. I glanced around. Doors lined the hallway, all equally forbidding. I tried to make sense of my surroundings, but the world felt hazy, undefined. One door caught my eye at the end, it was cracked open a sliver. Hesitating only for a moment, I stepped forward. The air was stale, tinged with something metallic. I nudged the door wider. Inside, a storage room awaited. Shelves overflowed with dusty items, abandoned toys, faded decorations, and long-forgotten games. A chill crept down my spine. Why were all these things here? It felt as if the room had been frozen in time, like a snapshot of lives that had once filled this place with joy. Then, a sound came from behind me. Sharp and shuddering, a voice, mimicking the laughter I'd heard before. It was deeper this time, filled with malice. My instincts kicked in. I backed away slowly, not daring to turn around completely. As I moved, my foot brushed against something soft at the bottom of the shelf. I knelt down to see what it was. A small teddy bear, its button eyes glinting in the dim light, was lying there. I picked it up, an inexplicable sense of familiarity washing over me. Something felt wrong about it, but I couldn't explain why. Then the laughter erupted again, louder, nearer. "Don't be afraid," it called, as if inviting me to join in some twisted game. I dropped the bear. I had no time to ponder its significance. I bolted toward the opposite door, desperate to escape the claustrophobia of my surroundings. I wrenched it open and found myself in another hallway, slightly more familiar. The walls were lined with photographs of children, happy faces frozen in time. But something caught my attention. The kids in the photos looked eerily similar to the boy and the others I had seen before, their eyes bright with mischief. A chill washed over me as I realized they weren't just smiling, they looked like they were waiting for something. Suddenly, the lights flickered overhead, casting odd shapes across the wall. I felt a whisper of wind, but the air was still. "Come play with us," the voice murmured again, echoing my worst fears. I clamped my hands over my ears, willing myself to shut it all out. A flash of movement caught my eye. I turned just in time to see something dart across the hallway, something too tall, too skinny. My pulse raced. I wanted to scream, but the sound got lodged in my throat. I had to find a way out of this place. I decided to retrace my steps, maybe back to the storage room. I pushed through the door again, but it swung shut behind me with a definitive thud. That's when I saw it, a glimmer at the back of the room, still darkened by dust. It was the mirror again, but it wasn't just reflecting me. The surface pulsed with images, flickering between the past and present, memories and nightmares, showing the kids' faces twisted in glee. I backed away, but a shadow loomed behind me. There was no more time to flee. Whatever I ran from was here now, ready to play its game. And I had no choice but to play along. The air shifted around me, thick with an urgency I couldn't shake. The laughter transformed into something darker, a cackling that echoed off the walls. Panic surged through me, urging me to find an exit. I turned back to the mirror, mesmerized despite my fear. The faces seemed to change, morphing into something grotesque. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the moment. It came from the doorway, followed by frantic footsteps. I spun around, my heart racing again. The door stood wide open. I stood frozen, waiting for whatever was out there to reveal itself. A girl appeared in the doorway, her hair tangled, eyes wide. "You have to come with me," she shouted. There was panic in her voice. "They're coming." "Who?" I asked, feeling both desperate and skeptical. "Just trust me." She darted into the room, her energy palpable, as if she were a magnet pulling me toward her. "The others are safe, but we have to hurry." I hesitated. The laughter echoed louder, now practically drowning out my thoughts. This girl looked eerily familiar, like she belonged to one of the photos on the hallway wall. "What do you mean, the others?" "I'll explain later, if we even have a later." She grabbed my arm and dragged me toward the door. I felt a surge of adrenaline, and I followed without thinking. We raced down the hallway, the world buzzing around us. She led me through an open area that looked strangely like a playroom, filled with old, faded toys. The memories of laughter rang hollow in my ears. It felt abandoned yet alive, as if it was watching us. The girl stopped suddenly, her grip slackening. There's nowhere else to go. My mind raced. My heartbeat felt like a drum, loud and chaotic as I scanned the room. What now? I whispered, dread mixing with desperation. Then, from the shadows, the murmur returned, now clear and unmistakable. Come play with us. The voices were many, layering over one another, pulling at threads in my mind. The atmosphere grew denser, each syllable thickening the air. We have to hide. She shrieked, darting behind a stack of boxes. I followed, crouching beside her, my heart pounding in my chest. I covered my mouth with my hand, trying to quell my ragged breaths. Then I noticed it a flicker from the corner of my eye. A shadow moved, creeping towards us. I could barely make out a shape, tall and overwhelming. It paused, and unfathomable darkness surrounded it. The air turned frigid, a biting chill that stole my breath away. What is that? I breathed, trembling. She peered out from behind the boxes, her face pale. I don't know, but it's not friendly. Time seemed to stretch, thick and suffocating. The shadow shifted slightly, and I thought I saw its eyes, a reflection of pure malevolence. As if sensing our presence, it turned and leaned closer. Stay quiet, she whispered fiercely. I held my breath, praying it wouldn't find us. In that moment, I realized I was no longer just fleeing. I was caught in something far more intricate, something that had woven itself into the fabric of time itself. Before I could think about the next move, the laughter erupted again, sharp and chilling. In the chaos, everything unraveled. The boxes surrounding us toppled over, bursting down like dominoes, and revealed our hiding spot. In an instant, the shadow lunged forward, and I understood this game was about to turn deadly. The darkness swallowed everything as the shadow lunged at us, its presence suffocating. I barely registered the girl beside me, her grip now a lifeline as we stumbled backward. Too late to run, we turned and dashed for the far wall, but escape felt impossible. Follow me. She shouted, her voice breaking through my fear. There was a strange urgency in her tone that broke through the haze of panic. She darted toward a shrouded door nestled in the corner, nearly hidden behind a tall stack of broken chairs. My heart raced, and I had to remind myself to breathe. I had no idea what was happening, but if the girl was right, staying put was a death wish. I pushed myself forward, dragging my feet, desperate to keep up with her. As we reached the door, she paused, fingers trembling as she tried to turn the knob. Come on. I urged, glancing back at the shadow that loomed behind us, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The door finally creaked open. We stumbled through into a cramped hallway. The laughter echoed again, but it sounded different now, angrier, more frustrated. I shuddered, instinctively pressing closer to the girl. Where are we going? I panted, trying to catch my breath. Just a little farther. She led the way down another dark corridor, the walls closing in around us. I could see faint flickers of what looked like old photographs. Faces peered down at us, expressionless, as if judging our every move. Who are you? I whispered, suddenly gripped by the urge to learn her story. She hesitated for a brief moment, glancing over her shoulder. I'm someone who survived, she replied. I need you to understand. This place, it lures you in. Lures? I breathed, terrified of what I might discover. Those who get trapped here never leave. Those voices, the laughter, it's their game. They want you to join them. My blood ran cold as I considered her words. The shadows weren't just creatures of the night, they were something more than I could comprehend. Wait, I said, suddenly realizing something. The others you mentioned, are they alive? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pressed on, her urgency palpable. The laughter neared, filling the hallway with sound. I glanced back, my mind racing. In that fleeting moment of doubt, I saw shapes forming in the darkness. Figures of children, their faces twisted in mirth. Here. She pushed open a door on the left. Without question, we tumbled through, slamming it shut behind us. We leaned against it, gasping for breath, desperate to drown out the laughter that now filled the room. Inside, the atmosphere shifted drastically. Sunlight flooded in through cracked windows, illuminating dust particles swirling through the air. It was eerily quiet, as if we had stepped into another world entirely. "What is this place?" I asked, scanning the walls lined with tattered banners and relics of a forgotten time. "It used to be a gathering space," she said, her eyes scanning the surroundings. "But now it's just another trap. A place meant to keep us tied to the games forever." I felt the weight of her words settle over me. "So how do we escape?" Before she could respond, the door shuddered violently. The laughter surged, louder than before, an overwhelming cacophony. I knew they could find us here. My heart raced again as I realized the urgency. "Look." She pointed to a dusty old bookshelf nearby. "Maybe there's a way through here." As she rushed toward it, I heard a low hum vibrating beneath the laughter. My stomach twisted with dread. This reminded me too much of that mirror back in the hallway. "Wait!" I shouted, but it was too late. She had grabbed a book and pulled it hard. The shelf began to creak, a hidden doorway slowly appearing in the wall behind it. "Maybe this is the way out," she exclaimed, but I felt a chill creeping down my spine. The laughter spilled into the room again, more menacing this time. That's when I saw it. From the shadows, a flicker of movement, a figure creeping out from behind the shelves, a smile too wide for any human face. And in that moment, I understood the game we were playing was about to level up. The figure emerged, a grotesque caricature of a child. Its eyes sparkled with mischief, and the unnatural smile stretched impossibly across its face. I felt my breath hitch, a mixture of fear and disbelief. "Run!" I shouted, shoving the girl toward the hidden doorway as panic ignited in my chest. But she hesitated, her own expression torn. "What if it's a trap?" she asked, glancing back at the advancing figure. "The whole place is a trap," I replied, urgency lacing my words. The laughter crescendoed, a cacophony of sparkling madness that clawed at my sanity. We didn't have time to think. With a final push, I urged her through the opening. As I followed her, a cold hand grazed my arm, icy fingers wrapping around my forearm like a vice. I yanked away, adrenaline propelling me through the doorway just as the laughter morphed into shrill screeches. On the other side, we stumbled into a small chamber. Sunlight streamed through a broken window, illuminating more photographs this time, those of the same children who laughed in the darkness. Yet their eyes felt different here, they held despair instead of joy. "What's with these pictures?" I mumbled, moving closer to inspect them. The girl caught up, her own gaze tracing the faded faces. "They're trapped," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Like us." A shiver ran down my spine. The more I looked, the more familiar they felt. One image stood out among the rest, a girl with dark hair and big, sad eyes. I could swear I had seen her before, but the memory slipped from my grasp. "Do you know her?" the girl beside me asked, catching my gaze. "I don't know," I admitted, rubbing my temples. My head throbbed with confusion, and the laughter echoed faintly in the distance again, as if taunting our existence. Before I could reply, the door shuddered again, rattling in its frame. Instinctively, we backed away from it, my heart pounding in rhythm with the approaching footsteps. The voice of the figure outside called, a mix of sing-song and aggression, "Come play with us. We have to find another way out," I urged, scanning the room. A tiny door in the corner caught my eye. It was almost hidden behind a dusty curtain. Over there. I pointed, and we rushed toward it. My hand gripped the handle, and I pulled it down, but it wouldn't budge. It's locked, she said, panic rising in her voice. Let me try. I pressed my shoulder against the door. It groaned in protest but didn't yield. The laughter outside grew louder, an ominous reminder that time was slipping through our fingers. Can you break it? She asked desperately. I can try. I braced myself, readying my body for impact. But just as I prepared to slam into the door, a loud crash echoed from the main hall, shaking the floor beneath us. The doorway splintered, and from the shadows, dark tendrils snaked into the room, curling around our ankles like serpents. Now! The girl shouted, kicking at the tendrils. We have to go. I swung my body against the door one last time. It burst open with a loud crack, swinging wide. Without a second thought, I dove through, pulling her along with me. Just as we escaped, the door slammed shut behind us. The laughter morphed into a roar, echoing off the walls. I didn't hear the screeches or taunts anymore. It was a primal, victorious noise, as though celebrating our narrow escape. As we tumbled out into a larger room, I looked back in time to see the shadow take shape again. This time, I could see it clearly. A figure standing tall, with a face that reflected every child from the photos. And in that moment, I realized this was just the beginning of the nightmare. The larger room felt chaotic, walls lined with grotesque carvings and faded murals. The light that poured in through the shattered windows didn't chase away the shadows, but only made them dance with more fervor. I took a quick breath, shaking the lingering chill from my arm. What now? The girl asked, glancing around. Every inch of the space felt alive, as if it were a part of a sinister game. I swallowed hard. We can't stay here. We have to keep moving. She nodded, her eyes wide with fear. In one corner, I noticed a staircase leading upward. It was narrow and steep, the wood rotten and creaking with every cautious step I took. I motioned for her to follow, and we ascended, each stride echoing ominously in the silence. As we reached the top, the air thickened. The hallway stretched out in front of us, lined with doors that seemed to taunt our uncertainty. A dark thought flitted through my mind: what if one of those doors hid the thing that chased us? We should check one, I whispered, glancing back down the stairs. The laughter had faded, but I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. Fine, she replied, her voice shaky but firm. Which one? I approached the first door and turned the knob. It clicked softly, opening to reveal a room filled with dusty toys. Old dolls stared back with hollow eyes, their expressions frozen in plastic. I bristled at the sight. It felt wrong. Nope. Not this one, I said as I closed the door. We moved to the next, and this time, the handle wouldn't budge. I pushed harder, frustration simmering. The door rattled, but remained sealed. That's when I felt it, a shift in the air, cold and heavy. Something's wrong, the girl said, stepping back. Before I could react, a high-pitched giggle erupted from behind the door. It wasn't just playful. It held malice. My heart raced. We need to go. Now. As we turned to leave, the sound of the door creaking open caught my attention. I whipped around, my pulse quickening. I thought for sure I'd see that distorted figure again, but instead, there was nothing. Just an empty doorway. Did you hear that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Yeah, she replied, eyes wide. What was that? I couldn't think about it. We have to keep moving. We hurried down the hallway. Each step felt weighted, and I could almost hear the thudding heartbeats of whatever lurked behind us. The doors marched along the walls, their presence suffocating like the shadows they cast. Then, as we reached the end of the corridor, another voice echoed in the distance, soft and melodic, calling out our names. My skin prickled. How did it know? That's not possible, I muttered, my voice trembling. I don't want to find out, she replied, shivering. But just as we turned to escape back down the hall, the air shifted again. I saw movement at the end of the corridor, a shadow dancing, forming shapes that writhed and slithered. It was as if the darkness was coming to life. Run! I shouted, fear gripping my heart, and together we fled back toward the stairs. I glanced back once, just once, and my breath caught. What I saw froze the blood in my veins. Figures emerging from the darkness, the children from the photographs, their eyes dull and hungry. This was a nightmare unfolding, and there was no waking up. My legs felt like lead as we barreled down the stairs, each creak amplifying the urgency of our escape. The laughter began to rise again, swelling like a dark tide behind us. The shadows pooled at the base of the steps, clawing for us as if the building itself were alive, eager to reel us back in. Keep moving, I urged, my breath straining against the constriction in my throat. We burst into the larger room, now filled with a confused frenzy of shadows and echoes. As we veered toward the main exit, fear propelled us, and the whispers grew into an anguished cacophony, their disappointment palpable. But as I reached for the door handle, it abruptly swung open, revealing a figure clad in darkness. I recoiled, fighting the urge to scream. It was a child, the boy from the photographs, his twisted grin broader than ever. You'll never leave, he declared, the shadows writhing around him, pulsing with energy. This way. The girl shouted, breaking my stupor. She tugged my arm, leading me deeper into the chaos. I followed blindly, adrenaline drowning my fear. We stumbled through a side door, a route I hoped might lead to freedom. Inside, the air thickened, scented with mildew and something sweet. Sunlight filtered through grime-covered windows, illuminating old furniture strewn about, creating a patchwork of dim shadows. In the distance, the echoes of the laughter contorted into something almost maniacal, as if cackling over our fleeting bravery. Where do we go? I panted, spinning around to face her. She scanned the room as if searching for an answer amid the debris. We need to find the exit. I saw a window at the far end, a thin rectangle of light cutting through the darkness. With renewed vigor, we sprinted toward it. The laughter receded, becoming a distant thrum, allowing the two of us a moment to think. I reached the window first, barely glancing outside. I could just see the community center's parking lot, an unchanged world awaiting us. Help me with this. I called out, struggling against the rusted latch. My heart sank when I realized it wouldn't budge. It wouldn't open. But she was right behind me, already pushing against the frame, determination lighting up her eyes. We can't give up. Before she could finish, I felt a frigid gust and then a crack. The door we just fled burst open violently, splintering the air with the laughter once more, now transformed into a riot of malicious glee. Run! I shouted, but the boy was blocking the way, the darkness stretching behind him, swelling, advancing like a predator hungry for its prey. Over here! She exclaimed, pointing to a door tucked in a corner behind a pile of junk. In our panic, we dashed toward it. I flung it open and we tumbled inside, the darkness swallowing us whole once more. The room was smaller, yet somehow it felt less oppressive. No laughter here, just the comfortable hush of dust settling. I took a moment to breathe as the door slammed shut behind us, listening intently. Do you think we lost them? She asked, her voice wavering. I wasn't sure. The silence was unkind, thick with anticipation. You said you survived, I said cautiously. How? We learned to outsmart them. They want to trap you, make you stay forever. In the beginning, I thought it was a game. Her voice trailed off, and I could see the horror etched on her face. I just found out about this place, and now I'm caught in chains, I admitted, gripping the edge of a dusty table. What can we do? They use fear against you. We have to reclaim the light, she whispered urgently. The buzzy energy shifted, and I could see the outlines of shadowy figures looming beyond the wall, restless as though they sensed our resolve. I took a step back, ready for whatever came next, but before I could call out, she lifted an old lantern that rested on the shelf beside us. "Light," she repeated, her eyes determined. She reached for a nearby rusted box, fumbling before producing a dusty match. I could sense the urgency again. The laughter was something that twisted around us, tempting us, calling us back to play. "Do it!" I shouted, realizing we needed to act quickly. With a flick of her wrist, she struck the match. Light enveloped the room, driving back the darkness. The shadows shrieked, a violent crescendo, and I felt an electric charge hum through me as the lantern illuminated the room, creating a small haven in the oppressive dusk. The response was immediate, a torrent of shadow writhing against the periphery of the glow, a disarray of discontent. The laughter grew muted, momentarily pushed back, the children's figure shifted, hesitating at the threshold. "Keep it close," I yelled, watching as the lantern glimmered brightly. The boy narrowed his eyes, and for a heartbeat, I could see the desperation beneath his grin. "Get out!" he howled, retreating. But just as our fears began to lift, other shapes began to crowd behind him, darker and angrier, rallying to return to the fray. "I think I see a way out," she shouted, urging me forward again as she clutched the lantern firmly. We raced toward the door, urgency pumping through my veins. In the hallway, we kept up the light, the shadows growing shorter around us. Yet, unpredictably, from behind closed doors sprang the children again, crying, "Stay with us." Their voices filled the air, more pleading than threatening. "Run!" I yelled, and we barreled ahead, bursting through a series of hallways, avoiding the dark grasping hands that reached out for us. Finally, we spotted the exit door, a solid barrier leading to the outside world. As we raced toward it, however, the figures surged forward, laughter morphing into angry cries, the heart of the darkness collecting behind us. I swung my shoulder against the door, yanking it open wide. Freedom awaited. The moment we stepped outside, the clamor faded, the laughter dying as daylight surged over us like an embrace. We stumbled and fell to our knees on the ground, breathing heavily, almost as if we had forgotten what it felt like to be free. "Did we escape?" I gasped, looking up at the community center in disbelief. In the distance, the shadows seemed to twitch, but they didn't chase us, they lingered in the doorway, torn between dimensions. "Maybe," she replied, her face pale but resolute. There was something unsettling in her tone. I stood, looking down at my hands, trembling against the fading terror. Even in the light, the echoes, they still haunted me. I turned to her. "What if it's not over? What if they're still there?" But, the girl smiled despite the uncertainty. "Even if they are, we're not playing anymore. We know their game." And even as the shadows loomed in the periphery, I realized that the laughter would always echo, but we had uncovered a choice no longer bound, but alert to the darkness we could never fully understand. With shaky confidence, I took a step away from the old community center, casting a final glance back before turning towards the sun, filled with questions that lingered unspoken, wondering if our escape was truly an end or just a new beginning.